Hello and welcome to Pickleball Therapy, the podcast dedicated to your pickleball improvement. Hope you're having a great week. This week we kicked off our three-part mini-series. It was a lot of fun. On Wednesday we talked about such an important concept, and it's one of these concepts that pickleball players, I think, a lot of times, just don't understand. And it's not a criticism of pickleball players. You don't know what you don't know. That's what we talk about it. And in this week's podcast, I thought it'd be interesting to talk about this idea of the iceberg, right? And I was trying to think of a way to communicate what I was trying to say on Wednesday, and I was thinking about it on Tuesday, and I think actually Wednesday morning was when I came up with this iceberg idea. And I'll explain it some more in the podcast, but I wanted to share that with you today because I think it's an interesting way of thinking about the game and thinking about what you know and what you don't know, and understanding that there's parts of the game that you just don't know yet. And then in the riff, I want to talk a little bit about your ability to improve. I want to talk a little bit about whether improvement is something that's available to you or not, and I'm going to address that in the riff. So if you're ready for the podcast, let's go ahead and dive right in. Are you ready to finally commit to your game, to get serious about your pickleball and your improvement? If you are, check out the We Are Pickleball System. It is the complete system that you need to get you to where you want to be as a pickleball player. Join CJ and me for our free three-part mini-series where we're going to be talking about how to avoid pop-ups, how to deal with bangers, and more. Make sure you're part of the We Are Pickleball mailing list so you're notified of the mini-series and you can sign up for it. You can join the We Are Pickleball mailing list by going to wearepickleball.com/pillars. You'll get our 3 pillars of pickleball and be part of our mailing list. I'll link to it below. Come to our mini-series, improve your game, and learn more about the complete pickleball system. We'll see you there. Before we jump into the iceberg, I want to invite you, if you were not able to make it on Wednesday, that's perfectly fine. If you register for the mini-series today, tomorrow, you'll still get access to a replay of the first session. We have our second session of the podcast, or not the podcast, but of the mini-series on Saturday. So if you're listening to it on Friday, it'll be tomorrow. If you're listening on Saturday, it'll be on Saturday. At 3 o'clock Eastern, we're going to be going live with our second session of the three-part mini-series, where we're going to be talking about the most important shots in pickleball and telling you what order they're in so you know the priority of the work you need to do. And then in the third session of the the third session of the mini-series, we're going to be doing that on next Wednesday, and you still have time to register for the mini-series. You can see the ones you haven't gotten to see yet that haven't happened yet live, and then the one that we did last Wednesday, you can get a replay of that and check that out. I think you're going to find them to be really helpful to you as you continue to work on your games and continue to think about pickleball. And, in Pickleball Therapy, we talk about pickleball improvement, and a lot of that is you getting to know the game better, right? It's not just knowing how to hit the shot better, even though that's part of it. A lot of it is actually just having a fuller relationship with pickleball. It's understanding the game better. And with the iceberg, I think you'll see what I'm talking about there. The other thing that we have launching in the next couple of weeks is the pickleball system. And so that's going to be pretty exciting for us. We've been putting this together over the last frankly, year and a half or longer, actually. And it's going to have, it's everything you need to become an awesome pickleball player all in one place. All 3 pillars, the mechanical, the athletic, and the strategic. And so all 3 are going to be covered in the system. So we're really excited about that. If you want to find out more about that, be on the lookout for it. Just make sure you're on our mail list and you'll get information on it. And definitely try and join us for that mini-series. All right, and I'll link to the mini-series below, by the way, so you can access the mini-series there. All right, let's talk about the iceberg. So what in the world am I talking about with this iceberg idea? And what occurs to me is that pickleball is deceiving, right? Pickleball is tricky. And the reason it's tricky is because it just looks so simple. And if you could see, I'm going to put it in air quotes for the video, but, simple with quotes around there, air quotes. It seems simple, right? You get out there, they hand you a paddle, there's a wiffle ball. I don't know, just go out there, hit the ball around, no big deal. But what you start figuring out is like, wait a minute, there's stuff I'm missing, right? There's something that I'm just not getting about this. And then it gets frustrating, right? Because you're like, well, I probably should understand this better, but I don't. And it seems simple. So I must be doing something wrong. There must be something wrong with me, right? Maybe I'm dumb or something. I don't know. And so I thought about this. The metaphor that I came up with was like an iceberg. And the idea is that you do know a lot about pickleball, right? You do know, for instance, how the 2-bounce rule works. And if you listen to the first part of our mini-series, we dive into the 2-bounce rule. But the part of the 2-bounce rule that you haven't even thought about it probably since you started playing, this 2-bounce rule, you just comply with it every time you play without thinking about it. And that's this part of the 2-bounce rule that lives above the level of the water, right? So it's the part of the iceberg that's floating above the water. And it's the part of the iceberg that you can easily see, right? And that's fine. That's great that you know that. But there is a huge part of the 2-bounce rule, right, in terms of how it impacts your game every time that you play, every single rally that you play. And that part of the 2-bounce rule lives underneath the waterline. Basically, it's the part of the iceberg, that really big part of the iceberg, that sits underneath the waterline. And that's what leads to the frustration. Because what happens is you're seeing the part on top, right? That's fine. But what you're not seeing is the part of the iceberg that's underneath the waterline. You're not seeing the bigger picture of how the 2-bounce rule intersects with the scoring rule and sets forth the tension, or creates the tension and the framework of the game that we play. So, what we're hoping to do with both the mini-series as well as the system is show you under the waterline, right? Basically allow you to come dive with us, right? Get in our submarine. We'll go down under the waterline and we'll look at the game from underneath the waterline so you can see the big part of the iceberg. And that'll help you really understand how everything ties together. Because what happens is this, you'll watch a video on YouTube. And I'm not critical of videos on YouTube because we make videos on YouTube. I think it's fine, right? We're transmitting information. The thing about those videos, though, is that that's stuff, those are strategies, right? Tips and strategies, right? Well, you need to know what tip and strategy makes sense for you, right? How are you going to know that? How are you going to differentiate one video from another, right? Or one piece of information from another? And even if it's consistent information, like, the different video creators are saying the same, they're saying the same thing, right? So there's consistency there. What you still can't be sure about without understanding the bottom, the bottom of the iceberg, the part underneath the surface is that what I need, right? Is that right for me right now where I am in the game? It may be right for you, may not be right for you, and it may be right for you later on. It's hard to say without more detail, but I can tell you this, without knowing the big picture of pickleball, it's impossible to make that determination. And that's why, CJ and I are actually really careful about the information that we put out. And we think about that, right? We think about who are we speaking with? And we don't want to put out, for instance, information that may make sense, right? In the sense that, like, okay, this is a strategy that works. But say it's a strategy that's designed for a 4 or 5 plus player. And we see a lot of videos like this that, you'll get advice and it'll be, this is what you need to do. But are they speaking to you or are they speaking to somebody else, right? And when we watch it, because of our training and because of our time studying this game and thinking about it, we can look at that video and go, you know what? That video is made for this audience, right? For this player, or it's appropriate, I should say, for this player. And what happens is there's players who aren't yet at that point in their path who are trying to, are spending their time chasing after this thing, right? That may not be what they need right now where they are along the path. And that's where having a better understanding of the big picture, and the big picture is, think of it this way. You have the rules that guide our game, right? That's the rule book. Things like the 2-bounce rule, the NVZ rule, the scoring rule, things like that. Those rules interact to create a framework, okay? That framework of the game, which is actually what we do on the court, right? We're obviously complying with the rules, but there's more to it. And you'll see that when you watch the mini-series video where I explain about the starting positions, where everybody stands, something that's not covered by the rules directly. It's a framework that we play by, but we play by that because of a rule. So the rules create the framework of the game. Once you know the framework of the game, now you're getting underneath the surface, right? Now you're starting to get underneath and seeing the big picture. The framework then gives us our objectives, right? What we're trying to accomplish. And one of the things, if you followed us at any amount of time, you know that we talk about the return side and we talk about the serve side. And that's the focus of our first part of the mini-series is return side versus serve side, and understanding the difference between the two and not playing the same way. But those are objectives, right? The serve side has objectives and the return side has objectives. That flow from what? from the framework. Once I know my objective, now I can decide what strategies, what shots, things like that, right? Things that I can actually do to accomplish my objectives that are consistent with a framework that is given to me by the rules, okay? Seems kind of convoluted, but that's how it works with every sport, and pickleball is no different. And so, underneath the surface, right, underneath the waterline, or not just the rules, because you know the rules. You know the rules of pickleball. But what's underneath the surface is it's this more complex interrelationship that arises out of these rules, which creates the framework of the game. And then there's these objectives that flow out of that, right? And that's the stuff that I think sometimes it seems like it's out of reach, right? Like it's not, I can't get to it, right? I don't see it. And that's what creates some frustration when you're out there playing pickleball, because you're not seeing the big picture, which is underneath the surface of the water or the water line. So, we welcome you to continue with us along the path, or allow us, I should say, to continue with you along the path. Join us for this mini series. Check out what we're talking about. Go deeper with the game. Go under peek under the waterline and see what's going on down there. I think it'll really help you frame out the game better, understand the framework of the game. It'll help improve your relationship with pickleball, because again, pickleball is one of those deceivingly simple activities. You look at it and you go, there is no way I'm not figuring this out. I cannot be this thick. And it is not about thickness. It is nothing like that. It is simply that you haven't yet looked underneath the waterline. Go under the waterline and you'll improve as a player, and your relationship with pickleball, which is even more important than how you play. Your relationship with the game will improve. All right, in the riff, we're going to talk about whether pickleball improvement is something that is achievable for you or reachable. So stay tuned for the riff. As a pickleball player, you are no doubt working on your game. But are you also working on your vision? Doesn't it make sense that better vision will lead to better pickleball? Not to mention better night driving. CJ and I rely on the experts at Visual Edge to help us track those balls so we don't ever miss a shot. If you're ready to take your vision and perhaps your game to the next level, join us inside Visual Edge. I'll link to it below. We'll see you inside. All right, so I wanted to talk about your ability to improve as a pickleball player, and your relationship with the game, and just life in general, right? And I think a lot of times we get stuck, and not just stuck in terms of not understanding things, but we get like this idea that we cannot improve. And I wanted to talk to you about when you watch pros play, right? And they're doing all of this, all of these fascinating things that they do when they play. When you really break it down, when you boil down their game, you can probably do 70-80% of what they're doing, right? And maybe more, maybe 70, 85%, of what they're doing. And we're talking about the general things that they do when they're playing pickleball. I'm not talking about the Ernies. I'm not talking about the ATPs. I'm not talking about the roll volleys and the crazy stuff, right? Which is fun and it's exciting, right? But there's about 80-85% of what they're doing that is simply, it's getting their serve in, getting their return in, nothing too crazy, right? It's not missing their volleys. It's making sure their shots clear the net. I mean, it's a lot of basic things. And the key to pickleball is that, and this is maybe, again, one of these like, sort of like, it's like a trick that it plays on you, because we think that it's complicated, like there's something secret that we need to figure out. And the answer is no, it's not. What it is it's just doing a lot of little things better than you did yesterday, right? And then hopefully doing them better than your opponents. That is how you improve as a pickleball player. It's not chasing after that illusory mirage that's down there that you're going to keep on chasing after. And even if you get to it, right, so you develop that fantastic shot, what you're going to learn is, well, that wasn't the answer, because the other parts of my game that I haven't worked on, right, the basics, the fundamentals, are things that are really important, or things that I didn't pay attention to, and instead I went chasing after this shot or this thing that's not really going to help me out. And even in the part one of the miniseries, I started off by the premise of saying that some of the things we were talking about are going to appear quote unquote simple, right? And they are perhaps, but they're critical. And so we went down. And sure enough, some of the folks that were there opined or wrote in the chat. They said, "This is too basic for me," and I politely said to them, then we wish you well with your improvement. I said, I would disagree with you. These are not too basic for you. These are the same things that the best players in the world do. They just do them better than most of us do. And that's what makes them the better players. But and so don't become discouraged, right? Thinking that this is too complicated, this is too big of an ask for you, because trust me, it is not. And a corollary to this is every one of us is on our own path, right? And you're on your own path. Find your path, stick to your path, and continue working on the things that are important for you based on where you are along your path. And as I mentioned earlier, we're launching the system. Part of the system that's really important, it's not just a system of like teaching, which is in there, right? It has all the tools you need. It also has a success path. And the point of the success path is so that you can figure out where you are along this success path. And then you can, based on that information, you can then focus, I should say, on the tools and content that you need right now based on where you are in the game. Because remember, all of us are walking our own pickleball journeys. And the important thing is for you to walk your journey. And CJ and I are here for you. We're happy to be here for you to help you along the way. So hopefully that'll help keep you on the path and keep you encouraged to continue working on your game. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you did enjoy it, please rate and review it. It helps us reach other players. And share it with your friends. Remember, and social media. Hey, put it on social media with people you know. Remember, if you enjoyed the podcast, they probably will too. I hope to see you at the next 2 sessions of the mini-series on tomorrow, Saturday, and next week on Wednesday. And hope you have a chance to catch up with the first session that we did in our 3-part mini-series. Be well, and we'll see you next week.